Stressful week, been to the gym, feel a lot better. It's chaotic, but it's one of those things we can't complain,
Yeah.
What challenges? Playing at the top level, we use a Premier League as an example.
Welcome back, Kelvin, for another episode on Frugal First. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, Dennis. Good to be back today. Appreciate you for coming on here and helping me out. Alan's absolutely just pieing me off. His availability is non-existent now. He's gone big time on us. But no, it's good to be back. A stressful week, been to the gym, feel a lot better. As you know, I'm in my final year at Oxford Brookes, so it's dissertation period. So it's chaotic, but it's one of those things we can't complain.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. It's good, and I appreciate you for helping me out today as well.
No worries. So today we're going to touch on your scholarship days.
Oh.
So we're going to ask a few questions on your money habits and how you was able to control the amount you spend.
Gosh.
And stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
So first question, when young players sign their first deal and suddenly have money, what challenges do they face managing it?
What challenges? I think lifestyle inflation. And I say that because whether it's a scholarship that you've signed or whether it's your first professional contract that you've signed, you get playing at the top level. We use a Premier League as an example. You go from scholarship money, for example, in my time, gosh, how much were we on? We weren't on that much, but it seemed like a lot in my scholarship days at Reading Football Club. And lifestyle inflation, you get into the habit of you're buying things because you're earning more than you were. Now you get into the habit of buying things you don't need. And I'll use myself as an example. And I've got a few friends, a lot of friends that will probably attest to this as well. I was buying, what was I buying at the time? Gosh, this is going way back. That's showing my age right now. But at the time as a 16-year-old, I think for us it was the Nike Air Forces, the Nike Huaraches, the Nike tracksuits, Adidas tracksuits, and, going in every day for training. The academy boys, you'd be going in with new tracksuits. Today, you boys are the Asics? We used to wear them in the gym for sessions, for weight trainings. Now the kids these days, you guys are wearing it for fashion. But anyway, so my day, it was that. It was just overspending. For now I look back at it, it was things I didn't need. And I wish I had that education. I know I keep banging on about it, but, I kept buying new tracksuits, kept buying new trainers, lifestyle inflation, trying to keep up the appearance. I'm a full-time footballer, academy boy. But it was one of those things where, for me now, looking back at it might be different for other people, but looking back at it, it was unnecessary. And I wish I'd been financially educated. I wish, my parents had really, educated me on how to manage my money a lot better than what I did back then. So it's more the exposure, and also it is difficult for young players because, as I said on a previous episode, you're exposed to first team players that they'll come in their Bentleys, they're coming in their Ferraris, they're coming in their Rolls Royces, they're coming in their Range Rovers, and you sort of want to be like them. You are competing with them, and you want to be like them. The designer wash bags, designer watches, sliders, everything. So you sort of get into the habit of just spending. And if you don't, without the right guidance or without the right, sort of money habits in terms of how to manage your money, you would just end up spending needlessly, really. So yeah, I think it's just, the challenge there is not being financially literate and not having the right education on how to sort of help you manage your money and those kind of things, and just spending your money just anyhow, just try to keep up with the appearance or keep up with the Joneses that you've made it, or you signed your first contract or one of those things. So yeah, it's one of those. That's one of the challenges. Yeah.
So with that, was it more of a discipline problem or a financial education problem?
I think it was a bit of both. I would say a bit of both, but more on the financial education side of things. Because as I said, reflecting back on my time, it was just, you get paid, what was it? Was it weekly or monthly? And, the first thing you want to do is, You want to go buy the next Harachi trainers. You want to go buy the next Air Force Ones, the white Air Force Ones. You want to go buy the next Nike tracksuits. I just got in the habit of just buying. Whereas for you, what we've done with you is, we've gone, no. When you first get paid, Dennis, what you're doing is prioritizing investing in your stocks and shares ISA, and every month I still have to text you every month, like, have you invested? And you're like, yep, I've done it, or no, I haven't, right, do it now. So I think it's a bit of both, but it sort of edges more towards the education side of things, because, had I have had that financial education, if I had a big brother or my parents or somebody, what I'm doing to you, Dennis, in terms of getting onto you, in terms of, Dennis, have you invested this month? Dennis, what's your spending? And every time you buy ASICS trainers, new ASICS trainers, I'm like, how much you buy it for? Why did you buy it? You've got another 5 pair in there. Why do you need another one? So I wish I'd had that. Kelvin, you don't need another Nike trainers, or you don't need a tracksuit, or you don't need to buy this. Or Kelvin, invest your money. Because what happened after that two-year period, unfortunately for me, was I got released by Reading, and I remember during that was a very, very dark period in my life as a youngster, and it wasn't easy at all, because I'd spent, I think I joined Reading at under 11s or maybe under 10s, I don't quite, under 11s or 12, and I'd been there for so long. It was everything that I knew, was all I knew. My parents migrated from Ghana to the United Kingdom, and straight away into Reading, and Reading was pretty much my life. Reading was all I knew. So to then play for Reading and be released after the under-18s, it was a massive blow for me. It was something that, obviously, I've gotten over it now, with therapy and stuff like that, because it's not easy. It really affected my mental health at the time, but I've been able to overcome it. It was a challenging period. After they released me, and the agent I was with at the time, Miles Anderson, he'll probably be watching, is a great man. He was with the SEM group. I didn't know what I was doing. I went on trials. Where did I think I went on trials at QPR. My mind wasn't in it. There was no money coming in. My heart wasn't in it. Obviously, mum and dad would give you the odd tenner here, £20 here, but I had no money coming in. So at that period, had I have had what I'm sort of helping you with in terms of being on top of your finances and prioritizing investing, I think a lot of the pressure that stems from finances, that stemmed from money, I wouldn't have put so much pressure on myself then. It's a bit of both, I would say. It's a bit of both. Yeah. In terms of the discipline and the financial education. Yeah, it's a bit of both.
So what happens then to young athletes when there's no financial safety net behind them?
Exactly what I just said with after I got released, and there was no money coming in. My agent at the time, he'd tell me to go here. I have to cover all the costs myself. Tell me to go here, tell me to go there. Then I'm thinking, oh my God, it's Friday, haven't been paid, or it's the end of the month, I've got no money. You'll go to this club, and they've got their own sort of system. They've got their own set of players. You're against it. Not only are you thinking about money, you're also thinking about, right, I really need to make an impression. So the pressure just, we can sit here for hours, and I can put it would turn into a therapy session, Dennis. But it was a really, really tough period, because money, you're living at home, why should you? But it makes a massive, it's a huge impact. As a young footballer, when you've been released, or when you're going on trials, or when you don't know whether you're going to get a contract, or when you don't know whether you're going to get signed, it's tough. It was a very difficult, reflecting back, I haven't had a chance to really reflect. As I said, over the years, I've had counselling, I've had therapy to get over that experience, and which was one of the main reasons why I decided to go abroad for a change of scenery, for something. And every experience in my footballing career I've really enjoyed, and it shaped me up for who I am today. Being released is something that for players who've experienced being released at an academy level, it's not easy. We can all, agree that it's not easy, and you'll see a player who is tipped to be the next big thing, and then all of a sudden they're released, or all of a sudden they go elsewhere, and you just don't see them again. It's a number of things, not only financial, but it could be, personal, money, it could family, it could be, lots and lots of different things. But it's one of those things where I know that the PFA have got initiatives in place to support young people in terms of that gap when they're released, and also, to help them find new clubs, which is working. So the PFA are after, for any young footballers out there that have experienced that, scholarship and they haven't been taken on, do make sure you full advantage of your PFA membership, and do get in touch with them. It's really, once you're a member for life. I still contact them for a lot of the benefits. They've been really, really helpful to me on my journey. As a third year nursing student at Oxford Brookes, I'm always in contact with them. How they can help me and stuff like that. So any young players that played at academy level, from Premier League up to League One, who are members of the PFA, do get in touch with them for support, whatever it may be. Do get in touch with them.
So, if you were starting over today with investing, what would you do first?
If I was starting over with investing, what would I do first? What I would do first, and you're probably going to get, everybody's tired of me saying, educate myself. The first thing I would do, obviously you educate yourself. Want to understand what you're investing in. Educate myself about the stock market. We talk about the stock market, every country has, they have their stock market. In London, in the UK, we've got the London Stock Exchange. And you've got, lots and lots of companies that are publicly traded. You educate yourself on that. Then when you go outside, when you go into the United States, you've got the New York Stock Exchange. You go to Germany, they've got theirs. You go to Holland, Netherlands, they've got theirs. You go to Japan, you go to China, they've got theirs. So I'll educate myself in a different stock markets. And then what I would do is, in addition to educating myself, for me, one of the things that helped me was I didn't mind building wealth the slow way, the boring way. I wasn't chasing the next high returns. My mindset wasn't to get rich quick. My mindset was to let my money work for me. My mindset was to, over time, to let compounding do its work. So if I were to start again, what I would do, I would start off with as little as £100 or £200 into the, and find an S&P 500 ETF. And I'd invest in that, the accumulating fund, because, one of the things that people have got to be cautious of, when we say, yes, invest in the S&P 500, you've also got to, you'll Google S&P 500 ETFs or index funds or whatever, and then give you lots of different ones. And you might pick the wrong one, which is why we're encouraging people to get in touch with us at Frugal First, so that, we can help you, guide you to make the right investment, so that, you don't pick the wrong fund, or you avoid making certain mistakes that I did when I was starting. I didn't make many mistakes, but you can easily make lots of mistakes. So I'd pick an accumulation fund of the S&P 500 ETF, and historically, the S&P has returned 10% annually in the past 100 years. And we established the other in previous episode that in the past 15 years, it's returned an annualized 14%. So for me, that is an indication that, this fund is steady. So all I'd do is I'd just, every month, just £100 into an S&P 500 ETF. Whilst in that process as well, I'd be educating myself. I'd be learning about compounding. I'd be learning about, the volatility of the stock market. I'll be learning. For me personally, the more confident I became, the more I increased how much I invested each month. So that's what I'll do. Educate myself, different stock markets, and historically, as I just said, historically the S&P has returned annualized 10% over the past 100 years. And also in the past 15 years, it's returned 14%. So I would then, be consistent with it. I'd block out all the noises, but that comes with education. And I'd look to invest for 7, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. That's what I'll do, because compounding is eighth wonder of the universe, as they say. So I'd let compounding do its work. For example, if we start with £100 a month over 5 years, and consistently, we're buying shares in the S&P ETF, and £100 over 5 years. I think that we're using a compound calculator. I think that works out to up to close to £9,000. If you, with £100 for 10 years, that's almost £19,000, £20,000. For 15 years, that's where compounding kicks in. Compounding needs time. When you give your money time to grow in the stock market, that's where, you make the real wealth is made. Yeah. So key thing is educating yourself about the stock market, educating yourself about index funds and ETFs. One of the great books that I read that helped me, J.L. Collins' Simple Path to Wealth. Really, really informative book. Obviously, you've got the Psychology of Money, you've got all of these books. But J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. You've also got The Millionaire Next Door. Really, really good book. Look that up. And these books helped me sort of have a long-term mindset and a long-term attitude to investing. As I said, I don't chase fast returns. I'm steady. Give me 10 to 12% compounded annual rate. I'm happy with that, because I know that over a long period of time, and as I did, the more I educated myself and I became aggressive with investing, and I was working my business, different things that I'm doing. I'll go for shifts. I'll do this. I'm working and I'm investing my money smartly. So that's what I'd do.
Yeah, that's really good advice. When you touch on the education side of it,
yeah,
what simple habits can families start today to build financial literacy together?
Simple, small habits can be, so for me, with my daughter, my Ava, once I understood about stock market investing, this is where, the millionaires and the billionaires, this is where they're growing their money. This is where they're making real wealth. And they don't teach us this in schools. That's an interesting bit. So for me, we were not taught at school about money. We weren't. So for me, the approach that I've taken with my daughter is I buy her age-appropriate financial literacy books. And it doesn't need to be expensive or anything. I'll just go on Vinted, as I said. I'll go to a charity shop and buy things. I'll go to Asda. I'll go to Vinted and buy age-appropriate financial literacy books. And I'll read it with her. And I'll teach her about assets. I'll teach her about how to grow her money. I'll teach her about, age appropriate. I'm not going to have her read The Intelligent Investor, because she won't. I remember when I asked you to read The Intelligent Investor and you were like, oh, Kelvin, is this? And I'm like, read it. Yeah. Or, we have to take another approach. I had to sit down with you. I'm like, read it. So one useful thing that parents can do, with educating their children about financial literacy is getting them age-appropriate books. They're cheap on Vinted. You can get one for £2, £3, £4, a £5. For Ava's birthdays, now it's like, oh, Daddy, am I getting a book? And I'm like, yeah, 100% you are. So I'm starting her young so that by the time and obviously I'm investing for her in a junior ISA as well. And I'm setting that same approach I took with Dennis when I was investing for him. And when he turned 18 and, we handed it over, we sort of transferred it from his Vanguard from a junior ISA to a stocks and shares ISA. The same approach that I'm doing with Ava Joy. You take your children, not to say that I don't spend quality time with my family, I do. Taking them out to restaurants and those things, you spend what? In today's age, you spend £100, £150, 200. Surely you can, for me, my mindset anyway is that, do you know what? I'm going to now allocate this amount and invest for my daughter's future. And by the time she's 18, she will have, based on the historical return in the S&P, for example, if we use the 14%, or even if we use the 12%, she'd be looking at what, 40,000, 50,000, based on how much I invest for her every month. So what I'm doing is what my parents didn't do for me. And that's not their fault. It's not to blame my parents or anything. But it's just to say that education is what's shaped me up. Financial education, financial literacy is what's shaped me up to, give her that stepping stone into being financially literate. For whatever reason, if I'm not around, that she'll know the value of money, or she'll know how to make her money grow for her. Yeah.
Some very good tips there. So that brings us to the end of our video.
Yeah.
And I hope that our audience are able to take the good points that you came across on board. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Listen, I really, really appreciate you helping me out with this. The family, everybody, Alan, yourself, And I also like to say a massive thank you to everyone that's subscribed so far. The channel's doing really, really well. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to Frugal First on YouTube. It really, really helps us. You know, it's going to help me. For if Dennis can't make it, you know, I can get someone else in. It's going to help us with the production team, with the editing team, you know, everything. So please, if you haven't, do make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. And any questions, you know, if anybody's unsure, or even if during this, if I've said anything that people are not sure about, do pop a message in the comment section, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Really appreciate everyone for supporting us here at Frugal First. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you.